All right, what's up, folks, and welcome back. We have had a week of straight 50-mile-an-hour winds here down on the property, and I haven't really had a chance to make many videos, but I just went through the second round of plumbing inspections, and we didn't pass again, but with just 2 remedies. So I'm going to walk through some of the mistakes that I made. I am not an experienced plumber. I'm obviously a DIYer. I'm very actively into this. This is a little beyond, just, add a vanity or make a vanity into a double vanity mode here. But at the same time, I did make plenty of mistakes, and I just wanted to talk through what they called out so that you don't make the same ones as I did. First things first, on the kitchen side here, they're requiring us to have an air admittance valve. And the reason for this, it was a little interesting. It was something I missed in the code, and I think it's easy for others to miss as well. The issue is that the vent needs to be above the flood level of the sink, the flood level of any item. Another mistake that I made was exactly the same one with the toilets, and I'll show you that in a minute. But basically what happens here is I've got my drain pipe coming down, my stub coming out for the sink, and then there's going to be a trap, right? And then the bottom of the sink is going to be about here, but that's not what they care about any longer. What the code is now requiring is that if that sink was full of water, absolutely full to the brim and overflowing onto the counter, when you fix that clog, they want the water to go down, right? And when that water goes down, it's going to draw a huge vacuum in the pipe. If that vent is below the level of it, it has the potential of sucking water out of other traps. So, but through a siphon effect. So what they want is for the vent here, sorry for the focus, to be above the flood level of the sink. And the problem is that with a kitchen sink, the flood level is going to be up to about here. So with an air admittance valve, you can get it right up to the vanity. And what we're really trying to do here is provide for that. Now, I thought this was a little bit on the edge. I did get my pipe pretty high. The guy said that it's, air quotes, almost impossible to do a kitchen sink without an air admittance valve these days. And he is an experienced residential plumber, thousands of hours, so I believe him, right? He's also the inspector. So when the inspector tells you to do something, you say, yes, sir. But when I actually measured it, I think I'm only about an inch out, and I did have an inch here. So if your window was high enough, I think you might be able to get away with it in a lot of situations. You're going to have to check your local code for that, obviously. It also depends on which code you follow, whether you're IBC or not. There are different codes for different regions of the country and different countries of the world. So depending on where you're watching, definitely check that out. But basically what our inspector's having me do to remedy this, just in case you ever want to know if you've made the same mistake, is to put a T right here, a sand obviously, since it's a vent, or excuse me, not a T, a 90. So he wants me to take a 90 out of the wall. And basically what would happen here is he told me to mark it. You can see the pipe, made the mark on the pipe where he told me to put it. But he said, come up here with a 90 just above this stub. You can't use the stub for what I'm about to describe, but come out of here with a 90, come out here in the wall, and the rough would just be another stub like that, but 2 inch instead of 1.5 inches. And then for trim, when you get the cabinet installed, what you'll do is you'll take that 90 up all the way to the top here and put an AAV on it at the very top of the cabinet. It has to make sure that it's above the flood line of the sink. So that's the remedy for this one here. Make sure you don't make the same mistake. He told me that I should just rip all this out. I don't think I actually have to remove the piping. That's not actually required, but I'm going to do that anyway just because it'll let me get some more insulation in here. Does mean it's a shame I did compromise some of my studs here, but it's not carrying a ton of roof load, so not a big deal. My mistake. Learn from your mistakes. Move on. Second thing they found of the remedies was cleanouts. So my laundry room is a bit of a mess, but let's go take a look over here. I thought that I had enough cleanouts, but I did not. And he had me add a cleanout for the washer dryer. And this is a specific requirement for laundry. So you can see the way I did this here is I've got pretty much an okay setup here for the drain. I do have it capped off here because I was having trouble getting this OD washer box to seal. The plug for it is just garbage. But in any event, at least for a 5 PSI pressure test anyway, that's really just like an air cap. If you're capping the thing off, you don't want any sewer smells because the trap dries out long-term, whatever. Anyway, so I've got this thing set up here, and what he wanted me to do is the first inspector told me to put it up here. The second inspector said, no, it should have been down here. So the first guy was saying that it was fine if it was higher because he was actually recommending it because that way you don't have to remove the washer to be able to get a snake down there. The second guy, who is actually an experience, has spent more time actually doing plumbing than inspecting. He's newer on the inspecting side, I think. Said that's a terrible idea. He's done a ton of plumbing, and he's like, when you run that thing down there, it's going to smack you in the face. Especially if it's motorized, there's just no way to really snake it comfortably, and it's going to be a real pain for service. But it is legal, so he's allowing it, especially since the first inspector recommended. But in any case, you need a clean out on your 2-inch line for your washer. Another thing they had me do is, you'll see in earlier videos that I had my water heater hung on the wall, and they asked me to remove it because they wanted me to do a pressure test. So this is now leaked down since I did the test, but it was holding pressure when the guy came in. It only needs to hold it for 15 minutes, but you need to do a 5 psi pressure test on the exhaust side of your water heater piping. So you can see that I've got the intake side just kind of hanging free. They don't care about that. This is just the exhaust side. And I just kind of jerry-rigged this kind of assembly up here. I'll have to cut that back off. Hopefully I've left myself enough that it still goes into the water heater properly. So that's that. Nothing really to speak of on the water. He was fine with all of this. Let's go into the bathrooms. A couple of things that I had to do here. For your tub filler, we are doing a tub here, and you'll notice in an earlier video I had my spout coming up. I might have mentioned that. We have decided this was originally going to be a shower, maybe with a linear drain. We've decided to go with a full tub and a liner, just a drop-in system, and so the rough-in has to be over an inch, inch and a half from the wall, inch and a half, 2 inches from the wall. So I've moved that over to support that. The other thing he wanted was for the tub filler, he wanted some blocking and support behind it, which is reasonable. This was very rigid. It's brass. It's securely held in place and didn't have any movement, but that's a thing that they want to see. So make sure if you're doing this, you don't want galvanized. You need either stainless or what's recommended is brass. Brass is a little harder to find the right fittings and the right length, and they were recommending, I think, 6 to 11 inches for this. So I split the baby and did it at around 8. But there was only a 6-inch stub and a 2-inch stub available, so I had to cobble them together. Home Depot didn't stock any 9 to 12-inch stubs here. So I put a 6 and a 2 with a coupler. That gets me to a good height here. This is all brass, and because it's brass, you also don't want a galvanized strap, so that has to be a copper strap. So that's all set. They're happy with that. And one other thing that they called out for us was on my plumbing lines that are running through the ceiling here. You can see that I do have 4 lines that are fairly closely spaced. The reason for that is, if you remember in the mechanical room, we've got a water manifold, which is really nice for service. I can turn off the lines to any one of the rooms of the house without shutting anything else off. So if we have a leak, we can fix it without losing water in a bathroom, etc. But because this was such a tight space here, these lines are really close together. And at one spot, a hot line was touching a cold line. They don't like to see that. So what I did was just add some more clips. Each of those clips is 3/8 of an inch wide. So just having them there, even though it's more support than is required, the clip also acts as a spacer. So those lines aren't touching anymore. Last thing, let's go outside. Oh, not the last thing. Sorry for the mess here. I'm kind of in the middle of several projects. In the back corner, you can see originally I had a fireplace stub. I didn't realize this was required, but every outlet for gas needs a box. Even if it's going to be in a cabinet, and we're going to have a fireplace, kind of a boxed-in fireplace here with an access hatch for the electrical and the gas. But even with that, you still need to have a box on the line so that it trims it out. So in any case, that was a requirement. Make sure you've got caps. If you're going for gas and you're DIYing your gas, make sure you cap all of your lines there. You need to have something on it as part of the test. It's just what they require. They don't require that on the water heater or on the furnace. Those are in well-ventilated areas and not ever going to be disconnected. But a fireplace can be disconnected, so you need to have a cap on it. Same for your stove. And I have a cap for my generator. All right, so coming out here, still holding pressure on gas, looks good. Level is a little low because it's cold. They're all happy with the gas install. That went really well. Highly recommend the Rector Seal 5. By the way, in case you're wondering what all these orange wires are that are hanging down, I've got wires running up to every corner of every window here. So on each side of every window, I have a wire. And the idea is to support a power supply for smart blinds, so you're not doing power supplies down to wall warts. Just a nice little thing. Nothing we're going to add tomorrow, but it's, future expansion. So here's the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. You can see all the stuff that I had to cut out. And originally what I had done was I had run this one vent, a dry vent, from the back corner of the house. It goes all the way up to the roof. And I had run that down to vent all of this stuff. And they didn't like that. And the reason, again, this is what I got wrong with the code. My vents were legal. I had properly wet or dry vented each thing that I was wet or dry venting. What I had not done was brought the vent in vertically from above the flood level of the toilet. That's the kicker. This toilet up here, you have to have the vent be vertically above the flood level of the toilet. So wherever the 90s come down for these toilets, as you can see, this counts as vertical. This has to go up straight up. You can't go horizontal. That's the important thing with the vents. So, in any case, what they did is have me tear out the section here. That's what all of this was that's lying on the ground. And bring the lavs down. These are the guest and master bath vanities. And they will come down and wet vent each toilet line. And they go, the way the instructor wanted. So he was happy with that. And then they did have me cap off what was the original vent there. So now the 2 showers are just vented by that one end vent. And they're okay. So make sure that you've got your vents coming vertically up from the flood level of your toilet, and they have to stay vertical, no less than 45 degrees from the vertical. So you can do as many 45s as you want, but they all have to go up, and a wet vent is allowed. The reason I made the mistake is I had misinterpreted the code. Wet vents are not allowed between floors, but the crawl space doesn't count. So I had been trying to avoid having a wet vent here down in the crawl space from this. Normally you would do all of this plumbing in the flooring itself and then kind of run it down where it needs to be. But I chose to run it a lot lower. That was just me. I'm inexperienced. I'm no good plumber. So this is just me learning. You're learning off me. Don't make my mistakes. Now that I know this, though, I could probably optimize some of my plumbing here. So I've got a couple of runs that come over that'll make it hard to get in the storage. It's not that bad. I mean, it's 6 feet. I can duck under it and walk. There's plenty of room over there. But at the same time, I could have done this a lot better. So just, again, learn off my mistakes and make sure you're not making the same ones here. And from that point forward, I think we're in good shape. I forgot to mention it, but I was missing one nail plate. These guys are pretty sharp with a ruler. They know what 1.25 inches looks like, and they'll immediately pick up on it if you're not there. So make sure you do that. One last comment before I close the video out here. I do have a couple of utility items over here. This is the back side of the house. The side that we're really not looking at very much, so we may park vehicles down here. This may become like a parking pad just to keep the cars out of sight so we can enjoy our views. And just to make things easy if you're washing the car, charging something, whatever you're needing to do, running an air compressor, inflating tires, I got an outlet box and a spigot over here. I don't know if we'll be able to see it, but if you look very carefully next to that second drain line, which comes down from the washer, just to the left of it, if you can make it out, there's a blue line coming down, and that is a low point drain. So I knew that we'd want to maybe winterize the house periodically if we're not going to be here for an extended period. Don't want to be running the heat for 6 months if we're traveling or something. So I put a low point drain in there with just a quarter turn valve. And the reason that won't freeze, that is frost protected, is because it will be full of air most of the time. So what I did here, which I'm hoping is a little bit clever, is because I have that Viega manifold in the laundry room, I can turn off the outside lines so they won't have water in them most of the time. Now, this right here is a service loop. That's going to go away. We're going to be putting siding and skirting on here. I need to pass inspection, so everything had to be mounted and attached, but it needs to come out and be popped out, maybe, put on a plinth or something like that. So I'm going to need to have a little flexibility in the line, and I just left a little extra length there so that I can pull it out to any distance and be able to, put it where I want it. But that length will come out, and then when it does,
this line will run at a little bit of a downward angle, and the other one does on the other side of the house as well. So that will actually be a low point for the hoses, and I'll be able to just open these spigots, open that thing, and drain the hose line so that there's only air in there. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. That's it for plumbing. We did not pass, but we just have 2 remedies to do. Hopefully they'll accept some photos or a video walkthrough. Enjoy our lovely mountain views. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with us. And we are about to turn a corner. So in our next videos, what you'll see us starting to do is prep for insulation and drywall. As soon as we get okay to cover, which is the sign off from the inspector, we will be working very hard on those items because that is the next task. So I think the house is going to change character quite a bit. It obviously has a lot of rough edges. You probably saw that, there are a ton of external details I still have to do. Things like waterproofing on the upper sections. It has just been too windy. I mean, it's just this time of year, we're getting 50-mile-an-hour gusts. Right now, it's 8 o'clock in the morning and 20 degrees out, so the air's not moving. But within the next 2 or 3 hours, it'll be gusting 40 again, according to the predictions, which have been pretty true so far. So all of this stuff is taking it in the shorts. If you look, I've got zip flashing tape that's peeling. By the way, I highly recommend, even if you're not using zip sheathing, use the zip tape. This PolyGuard is garbage. It does not stick. It's peeling everywhere that I put it. So I have to redo all my window flashing, which is not an emergency for this window because this panel here is not perfectly in line. I put them in a hurry, standing on a ladder in high wind, and I really needed to get the holes closed up. So that's why the windows are there. It was the safest place to store them is in the holes they're going to go into. But I do need to align them and level them. So what I'm going to be doing is working on insulation, getting all that stuff sorted out. Pretty soon we're going to start getting water running into the house, and we're going to start getting things like the furnace hooked up because we need that for a final CO. But the big push will be the drywall and all that. What I'm hoping is that stuff will take us into May, maybe towards the end of May. And around then, the weather starts usually getting a little more tolerable here. That's when I was doing all of the siding work, sheathing work last year. And what I think I'll do is I'll rent a man lift. And I'll get one of those big lifts that you drive around, and I'll rent it for like a week or two, buy all the siding, and I will finish all the waterproofing details, all the trim details, all the ugliness around the soffit here. This is just like trim material. I need to run a string line across it and cut it all flush and level. Just get everything finally boxed in, get the gable end on the porch put in. That's not actually going to be open like that. That's just temporary for now. So all of these details will come together, but a lot of them aren't required for the CO. So we're going to try to split the baby here and do as much as possible. What I really need to do is get, some more deck work done. This post is not actually out of level. It's actually curved. So I'm going to have to replace this post. I mounted that level. It's level on the bottom, but this is an item that needs a remedy. I need to put all the rest of the railing stuff around here, and all of that is going to be required for the CO. But they don't require particular siding. So I think we're going to try to have them come out and at least have a look at the place before getting into that. So in any case, stick with us. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support. And hopefully, learning from my mistakes helps you avoid making the same ones. See you next time.